I'll tell you, this is Don Stevens, I've got to say again, in London, just opposite the Meher Baba Center. And also I've got to remind you of the fact that I met Baba for the first time in the physical flesh. That's got a lot of connotations, in 1952 in New York. So, let's get on with the story. Every once in a while, when Baba would sit down first thing in the morning with the Mandali at Mayor Azad, there'd be several sort of fun little commentaries or happy family incidents that would come out. Very often, Baba would have the news read out to him from the Bombay Times, and once in a while there'd be something or another that he would comment on briefly about the day's news. I think this was at the particular period where the Chinese were beginning to make some of their very first threatening moves towards the North India border. At any rate, for whatever original reason, Baba was commenting upon certain of the great World War II leaders. By that time, of course, Roosevelt had long been dead. Churchill was very clearly becoming quite fragile. He had had several health upsets by that time. Baba simply shook his head and said, well, he's finished. And actually, it wasn't more than just a few days, perhaps a month or two after that, that Churchill did die. We still had de Gaulle, very strong and healthy in those days. He had not, of course, been one of the great leaders. Stalin had died some years before, and Baba was commenting that, well, now there's still Mao Zedong. He's the only other one of the great ones. And then, for no particular reason, apparently, he just volunteered. He said, very good man. Well, I was quite surprised, as a matter of fact, that Baba would say that Mao Zedong was a good man. I suppose that's probably an indication of my politics, but nevertheless, to go on, because Baba's viewpoint is more important. He repeated this. In fact, I think he repeated it 3 times, that Mao Tse was a good man, good heart, pointed to his heart, that this was a real heart quality that he had. Then the conversation switched around a little bit to Russia, what was going on, a very complicated period. And Baba said that Russia had tremendous potential for evil, for wrongdoing in the world. This he also mentioned 2 or 3 times, but he kept switching back to Mao Zedong, the Chinese, and said that, however, aside from Mao Zedong, and while he did not mention other leaders by name, he gave sort of a general, broad, sweeping statement that, with the exception of Mao, the others also had much of the same characteristics of the Russian, a very great potential for evil in the world. There's just one other brief thing, perhaps, from my own personal relatedness to Baba that I should take your time, and that is Baba's involvement of me in one of the great modern private competitive corporate enterprises. I've often been asked why or how I could possibly love Baba and work for the ideals, presumably, that we know Baba stood for, and yet work for a large corporate enterprise, which so many people nowadays feel can do nothing but evil. I don't happen to share that point of view, incidentally, but nevertheless, over the course of the decades of knowing Baba, on occasion, I would become so pent up inside and so impatient with some of the seemingly long-term, non-productive things that one must go through in business, that I often wanted to become more directly involved for a higher percentage of the time with this terribly exciting thing, which is what goes on in the insides of people and how they develop. So there were at least 3 occasions when I would want so desperately to be more directly involved in human beings that I said to Baba, isn't it about time that I left private enterprise and perhaps did something like teaching, something of this general sort? On each occasion, Baba, without a moment's reflection, would instantly say, "No, Don, stay where you are. This is right for you. This is the right background for your own development." As I've gradually become a bit more involved, thought more about what Baba tells us about sanskaras, I can see much more clearly now, and also as I see some of the longer-term products of the impact and the challenge of private industry on my own personal life, I can now see that there is absolutely nothing at all inconsistent in leading a Baba life and leading it in the world of corporate enterprise, set up for a private corporation set up for a profit motive. I think that one has to do quite a great deal of reflecting on what Baba has tried to tell us about how we unravel the compulsions of our lives, the sanskaras, as he puts it, that we have become involved in the coming to consciousness, and how those in turn are released. Because after all, this is the great thing that happens throughout human life.
Did Baba ever make any
Time's a flitting, you know. Start. We're going. All right. Okay. As far as the subject of marriage is concerned, I, like everyone else in my mid and latter 20s, was very concerned with when I was going to meet this lovely girl, not dressed in miniskirts in those days, but, you know, this sweet, charming girl who would really send me straight over the moon. And on one of these occasions, when I had the chance to visit Baba, I expressed my concern for this. Baba looked at me with sympathy, but, you know, just a little bit, as if I might have slightly lost my mind and didn't recognize the obvious. And he said, "Don, don't worry about it. When you meet the right person, seize them." And he said, "If you don't, why worry about it? This is all in Baba's hands." And that was the total, complete answer. So I must say, from that point on, I never seriously worried about whether I would meet this fabulous gal or whether I shouldn't. As a matter of fact, there were one or two occasions when I thought maybe I had not met the gal that I wanted to go out and suddenly grab and hit her over the head with a club and carry her off to my cave. But, you know, a girl on occasion who just seemed absolutely delightful and charming, and I would say something about her to Baba and say, "Well, now, is this the right person?" And Baba would not say anything derogatory or negative, but he rather quickly let me know that, no, this is not the right person nor the right situation. So this is about all that he tackled me on in relation to marriage. Irwin's asked me about my last meeting with Baba. Of course, none of us knew at any specific time that it would be the last meeting, but I certainly do remember it clearly because it was rather extraordinary, and it touched me very, very deeply with a certain sense of the unknown and a certain sense of awe. Again, it had been one of those lovely personal meetings with Baba at Meher Azad, and as it came to a close, and Baba said, "Well, now originally you were going to come for a maximum of 1 hour, Don, but Baba has allowed you to stay all day." Baba was going back up to the porch of the main building at Meher Azad, and as he would be left there by the Mandali who walked with him or who supported him as he went up the stairs, he gave me a great hug. And then when he was especially touched with something or another, he would usually give one a kiss on the cheek or on the neck. This he had done 2 or 3 times that day during the course of the meetings in the Mandali Hall. And as we went out towards the porch of Meher Azad, he did this also. Gave me another kiss on the neck. On the porch itself, as the Mandali were leaving, he embraced me again and again kissed me on the neck. I turned around, started to go down the stairs, was almost halfway through the garden when I heard a snapping of fingers and I think it was Arish, who was still standing in the double doorway of Mandali Hall, said, "Don, Baba wants you to come back." So I thought there was some problem and raced back up the steps beside Baba. The girls had not yet come out to take him from the porch. He was sitting there by himself, and beside Baba, the girls had not yet come out to take him from the porch. He was sitting there by himself, and he motioned me to come up and gave me another very long hug, and again, a kiss on the side of the neck. Instinctively, I said to myself, "This is very unusual. I wonder if you'll ever see." Well, then we go on to the interment of Baba's overcoat, as he always wanted to call it, was wanted to call it. I came as fast as I could from London and arrived actually just a day after he had dropped his body. Of course, one of the first things that one thinks about at that point is, well, what's this going to mean in one's own personal life? And so a great many things ran around through my mind. Does one, at that particular point, simply back off and go searching in another direction? What happens to all of this love and warmth that have been poured upon one through the course of, actually by that time, 2.5 decades? And I didn't, as a matter of fact. I came to the conclusion almost immediately that Baba was and is as real, despite the leaving behind of this corporeal robe, as he had been. I think this has to do partly with, let us say, the flood tide of being of an individual. The flood tide of Baba's being is still as strong in our day as when he was actually in the body. Many people, in fact, feel him even more strongly. I think there's another and perhaps equally important point, conclusion at least that I've come to. I don't know how it would strike other persons, and it's an odd term to use, but I look at it as sort of, let's say, energy eggs that Baba has left around at key points in environment for us. I've seen so many situations, knowing Baba over a period of time, being used to his humor, the way that he went and goes about things. You recognize in situations typical Baba humor, typical Baba structuring and relationship. And to see at various key points in one's life and in the lives of others, persons who are close to Baba and those who are drawn into Baba's orbit and who have been drawn in even after he dropped his body, to see Baba patterns take hold and Baba humor come out in the most extraordinary fashions. One can have absolutely no sense of a Baba being cut off, either from the people that he knew well during his lifetime and those people whom he has obviously ordained are to be drawn into Baba activity, into Baba development.